They actually released a scene from the finale, which I was kind of surprised about. So the scene features Daryl and Carol, and Daryl is talking about, well, he's questioning, really, I guess, why he left in the first place. Like, why did he even leave the Commonwealth or Alexandria, right? And now he's stuck over here, and he's just kind of frustrated about everything. And so, yeah, I want to break down this scene and get into some things that he says here that really makes me question a lot of, I guess, the journey of Daryl after The Walking Dead ended, the finale there and like what happened in the last couple episodes, and then obviously just the show in general. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. In this scene, Daryl is basically sort of just thinking about everything. So they're obviously on the shores here of Spain. So at some point, and remember, this is happening in the finale. So this is not the episode airing tomorrow. It's the episode airing a week from now, or I guess a week from tomorrow. So looking at this here, it's interesting. So whatever happens in Barcelona, Daryl makes it back to Carol, right? So we know how that's going to end. We don't know if Paz or Justina or Roberto are going to die, in that episode, but we know that somehow Daryl is going to make it back, and it looks like Carol is eventually going to make it back to, I guess, the shore here, wherever the boat is. And I do think the boat is likely going to be set on fire or destroyed, or something's going to happen to it. So it's probably going to be the ending of the episode, in my opinion. And then we'll see Carol and Daryl, I guess, just like shocked and like really sad about it all, like what's going to happen now. And I think this here is likely the opening minutes of the finale, where Carol and Daryl are just like, well, Daryl mostly is like, why did I have to ever leave? Like, why did I have to get into a fight with that guy or whatever? And then now I'm here. Like, just because of all of that, I am here now. And I really should have just like, did my own thing. Or like, obviously in France, I had a chance to go back and like, I never, took it. And there's just stuff like that, I think, that he's just wondering about. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously it confirms, I guess, sort of the direction here of the finale. I don't know what happened with everyone else and, the rest of the story, but Daryl and Carol are back here. And Daryl's just wondering, like, what's next kind of thing, right? And how are we ever going to get back home now? So I think it is going to feel very hopeless, and we'll see, I guess, where things go by the finale. Like, by the ending of this episode, will Daryl be like, all right, we're staying kind of thing? Or is he going to find another way to get back? Does Cadron show up or something? That's what's really going to be exciting about this episode, is they could really just go into a bunch of different directions here. I do think that it's going to end on a cliffhanger because it makes sense. Like, going into the final season here, and the final season's obviously going to have some sort of conclusion, right, to the story, and then somehow set up something else or whatever. But it will have a conclusion, obviously, to the show. And so season 3's finale is going to be the only time to do a cliffhanger. The one thing that I found really interesting here, though, is Daryl just kind of says, like, why did I leave home in the first place? Like, something like that anyways. And so that, to me, is really interesting. And it's why I don't want this show to end with Daryl seeing Rick, because it just makes no sense at all based off of what they've been doing here with this show. And it's kind of frustrating, I will say, with how they've handled the whole like Daryl and Rick storyline, because, after Rick, I guess, went missing, Daryl's story afterwards was something that was kind of, I would say, natural to the story. Like, Daryl kind of just left and he lived in the woods for years and just looked everywhere for Rick because they never found a body. So it was like, well, he has to be out there somewhere. Like, I want to find him. And he just kind of believed that Rick could be out there. And Michonne had the same belief as well. But obviously, I think she had a little bit more closure on it. She had other things to do in Alexandria and stuff. But Daryl just had that hope, like just that endless amount of hope that Rick was still alive. And at some point, over the next couple of seasons, Daryl just kind of like dropped that whole thing. And it's frustrating because like Michonne obviously didn't. And then she found proof that he was alive and then left. And obviously Michonne couldn't tell Daryl. I mean, that's the thing too. I feel like she should have just something there, right? So Daryl knows. Judith didn't say anything, so there's a lot of frustrations there, obviously, in those last like seasons or two, but I think that's the thing with how they handled that. I mean, they kind of explained it away by saying that Judith just didn't want to tell Daryl because Daryl was just going to leave. And so when we actually got the scene where Judith tells Daryl, Daryl really didn't have a reaction to it. It was just kind of like, cool. Like, that was pretty much his reaction. It was just like, oh, that's cool. Like, I wanted something bigger there where Daryl was like, I don't know. There was just something more that they could have done there. And so by the time we get to the very ending of the show and we see Daryl's last scene on The Walking Dead, he's driving off on his motorcycle. Like, the assumption there is that he's out there looking for Rick. And I think that that would have been a really awesome storyline to do. Like, yes, obviously he's out there looking for Rick, and that's exciting. That's so exciting. But what do? They just kind of make it very just like, well, I don't know, he's just out there driving off. Like, he could be out there looking for Rick, but it's just kind of like, he's just going to go out there out on his own and do whatever. I feel like whoever came up with that story and just the decision to have Daryl literally not care about anything with Rick really just doesn't get who Daryl is, because Daryl obviously still wants to bring Rick home. If Michonne's not back yet, even if you've dealt with the Commonwealth and everything, like, Daryl's going to go out there and look for Rick, or obviously try and find Michonne and bring her back home, right? So that really should have been the reason Daryl left, was I wanted to find Rick. Like, that was just the story. Daryl went out there to try and find Rick or Michonne and bring them back home. And then he got into trouble, this and that, and then eventually ended up in France, right? And so we get to this scene right here, and that's what's frustrating about it, is Daryl is just like, why'd I even leave? Like, he's questioning the whole thing, and it really makes it so that, it was really that Daryl just can't stay in one place. Like, that's kind of, what he's saying here really is just that he can't stay in one place for long, because there's this voice that always, comes to him and tells him that he kind of has to leave somewhere or just do something else. Like, he doesn't belong, basically. And obviously it's a lot of issues that he's going to have to sort of confront and everything. And I think that's an exciting storyline for sure. But I think it's just the fact that they're kind of removing the whole Rick Grimes part of it is so frustrating, because like, even in season 1, they kind of said there, like, I was out there looking for a friend or whatever. Like, Daryl says something like that. What is it? Did Daryl leave because he just wanted to leave? Or was it because he was looking for Rick? It's like, there's this constant, just different messaging about the whole thing that just makes no sense. Daryl's saying that here in this scene where he's like, why'd I even leave in the first place? I think it's so easy for Carol to be like, well, you wanted to look for Rick, right? Like, why have they not brought up Rick? It's something that is so frustrating, because, like, obviously we know he made it back home. They're likely going to reunite and have all the characters, obviously reunite. Why not bring up Rick Grimes? I just don't understand why it's something that they just avoid so much. It's really frustrating, honestly, because, like, it's the one thing I think that is so easy to make things exciting. And maybe they view it as like, oh, well, it's kind of a cheap thing to do. Like, you can bring up Rick Grimes or do this and that, and it would just make people really excited about whatever. But it's like, even looking at The Ones Who Live, Rick never asked about Daryl at all. Like, not one mention of Daryl. Just like, well, how is he doing? Like, there just wasn't any questions about anything. And I just think this is my issue when it comes to writing for this show, is that, and I don't know if it's Scott Gimple just being like, no, we can't say this or that, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's him that just sort of overlooks certain details like that, but these are the things that are so easy to just connect. And instead, they have to be very mysterious about the writing almost. Like, you can't go here or do that or whatever. It's just stuff like that where it feels like it's all part of the same story. If in this scene, and again, I haven't watched the finale, so maybe Carol or Daryl say something there, but like just say something there. Like, you left because you wanted to find Rick. Like, it's so simple. Just literally say something like that. Rick could have said something to Michonne, like, well, like, how's Daryl? And then Michonne's like, well, he was trying to look for you too, this and that. And just like get into a little thing, and Rick doesn't have to say anything else. Maybe he's just like, like, just kind of like something like that. Like, that could have happened in episode 4 easily. I think that there was just so many. I think that this is a big problem with The Walking Dead. Honestly, I think it's someone I feel like that's not either writing it or I don't know. I don't know why there's, obviously you can't have like constant mentions of Rick Grimes or just like this and that, but it's like whenever they want to reference something, it's like so carefully crafted into the dialogue where it's very mysterious and like you have to kind of know the reference, and, it's almost so obvious they're trying to not reference Rick. Like, you just notice it right away. You notice that they're trying to not reference certain people or just whatever, right? And it's just not a natural thing. And the thing about this show is that, the characters are very relatable. The world and the story is relatable, obviously not the zombie part, but in terms of how the characters are reacting to things and trying to survive and everything, right? Like, the story is just, it's always been so relatable. And I think that's the one thing with the story in the last however many years, is it hasn't been for the most part. I think obviously there's some aspects of the story that do work. Like, I'm not criticizing the whole show or anything like that, but it's these moments with the character where I think you can just make it so simple. Just be really real to what the characters would say. Daryl would probably say Rick, or Carol would be like, well, you thought Rick was alive. Like, why don't they ever really talk about Rick and like wonder, if Michonne ever made it back, or like just certain things, I think that it just makes a lot of sense to bring up certain things, especially Rick and Michonne. And it just really feels like they're trying to avoid bringing up those characters or just anything. And my theory on that, honestly, is that Scott Gimple is not too sure about the future of The Walking Dead. And so it's always one of those things where, like, obviously a TV show usually goes like season by season, right? Like, it's nothing that's going to be like, all right, we're going to do 5 seasons or just whatever. Like, maybe he knows that they're going to be going in this direction or whatever. But if you notice with a lot of the storylines, it's always sort of worked out like that, where things are just very like, it'll be teased just, not a lot. And then, like the Triple P card thing and a lot of stuff is just, it's kind of teased, but they never really confirm anything ever. And I think honestly, that's why he doesn't want Daryl to mention anything about like Rick or anything like that, because that's going to build up a lot of excitement for the future. And, obviously people wanting Daryl and Rick to actually reunite, but what if they can't do that? And he mentioned one word before, which was pivot, like we might have to pivot to this or whatever. And so I think he just plays it way too safe, like way too safe with The Walking Dead. And I mean, I don't know if maybe killing off Carl and the whole cliffhanger thing back in the day really, sort of taught him that, like, oh, if we do crazy things like that, then, something bad can happen. But I just think he's playing it way too safe now. And I think that's why some of the characters and their dialogue sometimes, it's just so frustrating. Like, you can mention Rick, you can say all of that, but if the characters have to go do something else because, say, Andrew Lincoln doesn't want to come back or something right now, then you just go do something else. You come up with another story as to why, Daryl doesn't, meet Rick right away or something, And so going back to the scene here, it is just, like, it's a cool scene for sure. I really do actually like this scene. It's just frustrating when Daryl is questioning why he even left in the first place, when it's like, well, I mean, we kind of knew already, though. Like, I mean, obviously they never really came out and said it, but then in the season 1 premiere, I believe, Daryl says something like, I was out there looking for a friend, or it was something like that anyways, basically kind of meaning that he was out there looking for Rick. And then now he's just like, why'd I even leave in the first place? Like, I feel like there should have been something else there said about Rick. Like, Carol could have said, well, you were trying to find Rick, or you were trying to look for Michonne, or maybe Daryl was just like, I really believe that he was still alive. And, like, that's what I mean. There's no excitement for things like that. I feel like, Daryl maybe at some point this season or in the final season should be like I really thought he was going to be alive, but maybe he's just gone, and maybe he comes to terms with the fact that Rick is just gone. And then it's exciting because we all know, no, actually he's alive and he made it back home. So there's a lot of excitement built for when Daryl sees him. I feel like there's no hype between Daryl and Rick reuniting right now. Obviously, once they announce it and they build to it, there will be that, but yeah, I don't know, but the scene does end with basically Carol just kind of saying, well, maybe when you make it back home, you won't want to leave. And so Daryl's just like, I guess we'll see, sort of thing, right? So, yeah, I think this scene is overall, a really good way to start the finale here. I do wonder what it means for the finale. Like, maybe Daryl is just like, I don't want to continue running and fighting anymore. Like, we're just going to stay. Obviously, we know by the finale that, season 4's finale, that's likely not going to happen, but maybe that's just kind of where they're at here. I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it here. Post all your thoughts down below, and I'll see you in the next one.